welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, one of the best jobs to be doing and most important jobs to be doing right after harvest is checking your grain bins. We'll talk about a few things you should be looking for and some problems that are already starting to happen around the country.
We'll also discuss what we believe was the worst disease in soybeans this past year. It's Sclerotinia white mold. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up next year.
Yeah, one of the most fun things about the Ag PhD show, besides teasing Brian a little bit, is figuring out what the weed of the week is. Hopefully you can identify this weed. We'll show you how to get it under control on your farm. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Over the last few years, we've seen a lot of people, thanks to the national media, get really concerned about what we as farmers are doing on the farm. And don't get me wrong, that's fine if people want to scrutinize a little bit what we are doing on the farm. But you need to understand what some of these things are. So during our Farm Basics time today, we want to talk about why do farmers apply fall fertilizer? And the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of people say, well, you don't need that fertilizer for your spring crop until way into next year. So why do you put it out in the fall? You're going to lose most of it and pollute our earth. Well, that's absolutely not true. We want to explain why today.
Well, I too share some appreciation for the concern. I'm glad people are concerned about that. I'm glad people care that farmers are doing a good job. And most importantly, I'm glad farmers care they're doing a good job. Why are we putting on fertilizer in the fall in some cases? Well, I guess here's a few things that we look at if we're going to consider fall fertilizer application on our farm, and it would be the same concerns for farmers across the country. First of all, we don't want to put fertilizer out on farmland that might not get farmed next year. For example, river bottom ground. Is it prone to a flood? Well, even if you're in a drought right now, it's a long time before next spring's planting, and we certainly could get heavy snowfall over the winter and end up with some flooding in the spring. So if we've got ground that's at all potentially floodable, we don't want to put any fertilizer out there. We don't want to take any chance of that fertilizer going away. Another thing that we do to manage fertilizer with fall applications is we like to place it beneath the soil surface. When you think about any issue with runoff or erosion or those kind of things, that all happens with the surface of the soil, not deep down underneath the soil. So by injecting nutrients or by doing tillage to move those nutrients down below the soil where they're safe, we can avoid any issues with any kind of off-target movement.
Here's the most important thing though, applying the fertilizer late in the fall. The thing that we have in the northern United States is frost. The ground literally freezes up. So to begin with, a lot of people talk about a 50-degree soil temp where we want to start applying fertilizer. Well, the reason why is because once you get below 50 degrees, a lot of the soil microbes aren't active. There are not a lot of roots growing. There's basically nothing to use up that fertilizer. But then the next thing is, soon after the soil temp is down to 50, it's down to 32. Everything is frozen, literally solid in place. It physically can't go anywhere. So we really don't get too worried about it. And then the other thing Darren talked already about in the spring and some of the considerations we have there, one of the things, just so you know, as farmers in the northern United States that we do is we will literally start planting quite often on our farm before the frost is even out of the ground. In other words, that fertilizer's locked, solid, tight, frozen, and we're already planting on top. So what I'm trying to say is, it seems like, oh, it's way in advance of when you plant. Well, based on the calendar it is, but based on, hey, these nutrients could actually move, we're really only 2 or 3 or maybe at the most 4 weeks in advance when you look at it that way.
Well, and there are many different types of fertilizer. When you think about some of the fertilizer types have the potential to leach down in the soil, move with groundwater movement. That's true. And there are other nutrients that don't move hardly at all. These are the nutrients that farmers focus on putting in the fall. When you think of some of the nutrients that we're applying, they're in the form of a rock. And how quickly are those nutrients going to come available from a rock? It's going to take some time and it's going to take some moisture to make that happen. So like in a crop like soybeans, for example, they need most of their nutrient uptake next year in July and August in this part of the country. Fertilizer applications now of these rock type source nutrients, it's going to take that long for us to get enough moisture and enough heat to get those nutrients to really break down so they are available for our crop next year. So farmers definitely weigh these things out in their minds. There's pros and there's cons of any choice that you make, there's rarely a choice that everything is great about it. There's always, hey, this could be better or this could be worse. And so farmers are looking at that as, hey, what's the best thing for my soil? Like this land that we're standing on right now, we're the 4th generation of our family to farm it. Believe me, we're thinking about this ground of, hey, anything that we do here, how is that going to impact our kids, the next generation that farm this, potentially our grandkids, who knows how long it'll stay in our family. The other thing is, we're drinking water out of the well here. We don't want to do anything that's going to be dangerous for us, that could pollute the water that we're going to drink and that our kids are going to drink. We're going to do everything right, and we want to manage the soil so it stays here long term.
And let's face it, if a farmer over-applies fertilizer or applies it incorrectly and the fertilizer disappears, that's lost money for the farmer. So farmers aren't out there wasting money. They're not polluting the environment. But yes, I mean, we are constantly talking to farmers about the right ways to do these things, but please understand that the vast majority of farmers are doing it right, and even fall applied fertilizer, hey, that's a good option if you apply it in the right fashion and at the right rate.
One other thing farmers are concerned about is keeping weeds out of their fields. Can you identify this week's weed?
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Stop coring your bins with the AgriDry Gravity Grain Spreader. Traditional bin filling systems create uneven concentrations of grain and fine particulates. Uniform grain distribution allows even airflow throughout the entire bin, giving you more control over temperature and moisture content, increasing your grain quality and bottom line. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
As a farmer, one of the most important things you need to do every winter is check your grain bins. Now, that's not rocket science. That's not anything you haven't heard before. You need to level the bin off. You need to check the grain bin. But we're going to talk in a little more detail about how you manage the moisture in there, how you manage the bugs that could potentially get in there, and those types of things today.
Well, we certainly want to manage the temperature and the moisture in our grain bins. And I'll say this, Brian, you say, oh, it's not rocket science. As a farmer, you're always looking for what's the next job that I got to get done. And hey, you know what? The ground hasn't frozen up yet. I'm still trying to apply some manure. I'm still trying to get some fertilizer out there. I'm still trying to do some tillage. And we forget, you know what? All our money is sitting there in a grain bin. If that goes bad, we're going to lose a lot. And we have to keep an eye on that at least once a week. And if anything at all is kind of questionable, we need to be out there even more often looking at those grain bins.
Yeah, but there's another way to manage this thing, and it's with technology and data. So for example, on our own farm here, just a little over a year ago, we put on some systems from AgriDry so we can get daily reports. I can get emails, I can get alerts, I can get texts. So if something is out of line, moisture-wise or temperature-wise, then I'm gonna know about it right away. And also, the nice thing here is it can automatically turn the fan on based on what the outside air temperature is and the outside humidity. So we as farmers have known for years that, boy, I can either dry grain down or I can add moisture to it if I was to control my bin fans correctly based on temperature and moisture. There are some simple charts out there. They've been available for 50 years, but to shut those on and off at just the right times, we've tried to do that before manually. It's impossible. You just can't be there. Well, you could be there if literally that was the only thing you were going to do.
Give up your whole day. That's
right.
That's what it's going to be. You're going to give up your whole day every day because all of a sudden, hey, the temperature's right. I can cool things down, and then boom, here comes the humidity. And you say, oh no, now I got 80% humidity. That's not good. I can't pump moisture into my bin, so you got to shut things down. You got to find that perfect balance for temperature and humidity to make everything work out just right.
Right, but here's the way I look at it on our own farm. Okay, let's say that I could harvest my soybeans at 15% instead of 13%. Ooh, that means I get to start a couple days earlier. That also means that if I get that moisture just right in the grain bin so I can sell it at 13% as opposed to 11 or 10 or 8%, I just made more money because in effect I'm selling moisture to the elevator. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we're trying to do anything illegal and add a garden hose to the grain, but by controlling the bin fans and knowing the outside temperature and humidity, we actually can put more moisture back in, or the way I like to phrase it to guys is you'll have better seed quality and get more bushels and have less loss at the combine if you just harvest it a little bit wetter and take a little moisture out. So it's one of the things that we want you to be considering on your own farm. The other thing is when we talk about corn, we used to dry all of our corn down to 12% moisture, seriously, because we knew that most of it we were going to store into the next summer. Well, now I don't have to do that. I can dry down to 15 or 16%, and I can let the fans do the rest of the work, or at least keep the temperature right, keep that moisture right. And I also know that, hey, I've got alerts, I got sensors in there, so if anything's starting to go out of condition, then I can get it addressed right away.
One thing I want to point out too as we get going, because a lot of this stuff, we just kind of assume that everybody knows this and that about grain bins. I mean, really, think about this. Where's your owner's manual, and when's the last time you read that? I was talking to a farmer, now this has probably been 3 or 4 years ago, and he said, oh man, I got to get some grain into the elevator today. I don't have time to do XYZ with me. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, what's your situation? He goes, well, I went up to check on that grain bin, and I opened the door and I'm staring my face right into a bunch of grain. We forgot to take the top off that bin. We overfilled it trying to get harvest done. And I know that this has happened to just about anybody that's ever farmed and has a grain bin, that you do that and then you forget about some of those things later on, that, oh yeah, I was going to do this or that. So getting that grain bin down to a normal level so your vents can all work and your fans can work properly is so important. Leveling off that top, as Brian talked about right off the bat today, really helps allowing that moisture to move the way it's supposed to. If you've got a peak in there, that's where the moisture is going to move to, and you're going to see some spoilage.
The other thing is bugs. Okay, if you've got a bad bug problem, well, there are products you can use, but unfortunately almost all of them are super dangerous. We're just not real big on those. Look for safe alternatives if you can. Get the grain hauled out. You know, a lot of times you can avoid these issues if you just clean out the grain bin 100%, sweep it down, spray malathion in there, get it all prepared before you ever put grain in it. So yeah, if you ended up with some bugs, get rid of it, get the problem taken care of for this time, and in the future, just make sure that bin is better cleaned out and use insecticide always before you fill a bin.
But keeping those grain bins in shape is very, very important to your profitability. So is weed control. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
At Fisher Tradition Farms, we Verus all of our acres, and any new additional acres are automatically Verus. Verus maps allow us to know exactly where our soil types change and how much they change. We use AgroLiquid's Enhance, High Energy N, and Access that allows us to add sulfur. We can customize our AgroLiquid products on a per pound, per acre basis as needed.
There are no marks of conflict lining this landscape. No echoes of economic hardship, just the unmistakable murmur of Mother Nature's hand. In the perennial quest to outperform, ensure your crop gets the nutrients it craves with a Veil Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Nothing helps protect your investment more, so you can grow confidently no matter what comes your way. Avail. Hold your ground.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
Presenting the new 2016 Apache sprayer. If you could save money and increase yield, why wait? Delaying change can cost you money.
It's phenomenal the return of investment it brings back. In my mind, a sprayer is the biggest return of investment you can bring back.
Apache owners apply in half the time of a full type, apply when they want versus custom, and spend less than Hydrostat owners, not to mention less weight on their crops. Go ahead and compare. We hope you do. Visit etsprayers.com to locate a dealer and how to save with an Apache. Apache, now more than ever.
One of the worst diseases in soybeans this year was Sclerotinia white mold, but you know what? It's a problem in sunflowers, dry beans, and a number of other crops too. So we want to talk about how to solve this problem on your farm.
I'll say this, there are no soybean varieties out there that are completely resistant to Sclerotinia white mold. Now some are more prone to getting white mold infections. A lot of that comes back to what the plant type is. When you think about a tall, thin line bean, well, hey, you probably aren't going to see as much white mold there as if you had a soybean that was maybe a medium height or a shorter height, but really bushy. So it really holds that canopy tight and holds lots of moisture underneath. That's where you're going to see more chances of having white mold. Also, you know, you have to think about the past history of those fields. If one field has got some white mold this year, chances are there was white mold out there in the past, whether you noticed it or not. There's just a number of things to kind of watch if you're in an area prone to white mold issues.
White mold is a fungus. It's going to start with little mushrooms and they're going to shoot spores out. Typically they get entry into the plant with dried up flowers on a soybean plant, for example. So in all crops though, it's going to come just a little bit later in the season. It's not going to be right away when the crop is 2 inches tall or anything like that. The infection is going to occur later. If you've had a white mold issue, like in soybeans this year, if you had a big problem, what you'd want to do, our advice would be go out there right away and spray Contans. It's a biological, it's expensive. It's 25 or 30 bucks an acre. So right away you say, oh my goodness, I can't spend that kind of money. Really? Have you looked at your yield monitor? A lot of guys I'm talking to, 20, maybe even 30 bushel yield loss where the white mold's bad. So go spray those areas where the white mold's bad, and this biological, it literally eats the sclerotia. Those are basically the seeds to get those mushrooms going the next time you plant soybeans. And even if it's going to be a couple years until you plant soybeans there again, you want to kill as many of those sclerotia as possible.
All right, with white mold, we see a lot of variance out in the fields. And I was in a field this year that had a variety trial, and it was a full maturity group from the earliest bean in the plant in the field to the latest bean. And we saw lots of white mold in the early maturing beans. We saw lots of white mold in the late maturing beans, and kind of in the middle of those, the mid maturity beans, virtually no white mold. And your first observation is, well, boy, I like those varieties that are kind of that mid maturity. They seem to have a lot better white mold tolerance. No. It has to do a lot with weather. With white mold, when we get multiple consecutive days above 90 degrees, we rarely see white mold becoming a problem. It needs a little cooler weather. So this comes down to your farm. When did you receive moisture? How long did the ground stay wet? And what were the daytime highs? Were you getting cloudy days with highs in the 70s or 80s? Well, that really favors white mold development. And we saw that when those early maturing soybeans were just starting to flower and then kind of finishing up flowering. The mid-maturity beans, well, when they were flowering, we really didn't have much moisture. We had a good spell of heat there for a few weeks, and they didn't really get any white mold because it wasn't happening at that point. And then later in the season, again, we started getting cloudy days, rainy days, or we're getting just a little bit of rain each day for a number of days in a row in cooler weather, and all of a sudden white mold became a problem again.
Okay, so here's what you need to do. Again, Contans is the best way to go. We prefer it right after soybeans. That would definitely help. Next step. plant in wider rows. If you're in 30-inch rows as opposed to the drill, you let more air move through. Next step, Cobra in soybeans. You can absolutely do that. It will kind of thin your plants out a little bit, drop some leaves, allows more air to move through. Valent says it's got fungicidal properties. All I know is if you look at Cobra, it's almost as good as the fungicides in terms of white mold control. Then the next step is spraying at least once and possibly even 2 or 3 times with products like Domark, Proline, Endura, these triazoles, or like Endura. I mean, those are good products to use.
A couple other things to consider: variable rate planting. If you know there's certain areas of your field going with lower planting populations just in those areas where you're more prone to white mold.
One other thing is you're typically going to see this in your most fertile, very best ground, so that's absolutely where you want to take all these steps and all these precautions.
And of course, crop rotation too. You rotate to corn or wheat, crops that are not susceptible to white mold. You can kind of skip that cycle.
Well, one thing you never seem to skip the cycle of is having weeds on your farm, especially our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our Weed of the Week is Amazon Sprangletop.
The good thing about Amazon Sprangletop, Brian, is we don't have it in the upper Midwest where we're
lucky.
at. So we aren't fighting this weed here. It's a really big concern though further south, especially in rice. A lot of times you'll see a beautiful rice field, then you'll see this white kind of Christmas tree looking seed head on a weed sticking out above the rice. That is Amazon Sprangletop.
All right, if you're going to get it under control in rice, that's where a lot of growers are using the conventional option would be Clincher. Certainly you could go out there with Command, but a lot of people are looking at Clearfield rice. So if you use Clearfield rice, then you can use a product like New Path that's got that ACCase. It'd be real similar to Pursuit or Raptor, basically, that we're familiar with in soybeans.
All right, let's talk about soybeans. The pre-emerge grass herbicides like Prowl, Treflan, Sonlan are your best options. Command gets used pre in a number of different crops, and Command has done a pretty nice job. In corn, same thing. The Group 15 pre-emerge grass herbicides at full rates are the best, like a Harness or Surpass or Dual or Outlook. Then when we look at wheat, we have some ACCase resistance with Amazon Sprangletop, so a lot of times we'll end up with an ALS product like a Prepare, for example, down. Post-emerge Clearfield wheat could be used. You could use Beyond in Clearfield wheat. Post-emerge in corn, if you've got Roundup as an option, that's the best. Post-emerge in soybeans, Roundup would be the best. Liberty's okay, but you have to get it when it's small and use a full rate to do a really good job. And then you could use those grass killers post-emerge in soybeans, but you've got to use like those volunteer corn control herbicides, your Assures and Clethodim and those kind of things. You've got to use them at full rates if you want to try and get Amazon Sprangletop.
Well, once again, this is a tough grass, but fortunately we have many control options in pretty much every crop. Just get ahead of it, use a good pre-program, and follow with another post-emerge choice to clean up Amazon Sprangletop.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Dig, lay, and bury drain tile all in one pass with the Crary Tile Pro Plow. The Crary Tile Pro Plow lays tile up to 7 feet deep with boot sizes of 4 to 12 inches. Advantages of installing drain tile to your field provides increased overall yield, improved soil moisture levels, and controls soil erosion. It pays to tile with a Crary Tile Pro. To locate a dealer near you, visit www.crarytilepro.com.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a Soil Max Gold Digger tile plow. Soil Max tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a Soil Max Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
I choose Stein.
I choose service.
I choose results.
I choose research.
I choose genetics.
I choose Stein.
At Stein, we have products that are second to none.
You know, Stein has a background of the highest yielding genetics in the marketplace.
They are a world-class leader in genetics. We push the limits, we try new things, we develop genetics, all designed to benefit the farmer. I choose Stein because Stein has yield.
We have a school and a church nearby. I actually go to the classroom to educate the students about what's going on here on my farm. The system that I have, I tie everything together. No-till, cover crops. We applied agri-liquid in-furrow with our soybeans this year. It seemed like they jumped out of the soil, even though we had the record rainfall. I really feel that I'm feeding my plant on a consistent year-round basis throughout the growing season.
Are you wasting money applying the wrong fertilizers on your farm? Here are 3 easy steps to finding out. First, download the free Ag PhD soil test app. Next, pull your own samples. You can probably sample 1,000 acres a day using 5-acre grids. Finally, submit the samples and get both Ag PhD and Midwest Labs recommendations. You can also quickly and easily build your own variable rate application maps and controller files. Go to agphdsoiltest.com to learn more.
Our CT applicators are changing the way you apply products to seed.
The one thing we really like about the applicator is how accurate it gets the fluency dispensed on the seed.
The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in even and accurate distribution.
I would strongly encourage looking at one of these applicators. The biggest selling point is the pinpoint accuracy, and we're not leaving dollars on the table.
The CT applicator can be used with any seed delivery system at the time of planting. Remember, CT applicators for the changing times.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
Late season nitrogen availability in wheat is critical if you want to increase protein levels. Early season nitrogen is often used to supplement a soil fertility program. The question is, how do you apply all that nitrogen without burning your crop? The answer has been out there for years, but it's still in the early stages of adoption in some areas. We'll explain in today's Iron Talk. Brian and I are always splitting the nutrient application up in our wheat. In-crop applications on our farm are done via stream barring. If you think of a spray boom and the nozzles that make a V-shaped pattern spreading your crop protection applications evenly across the plants in the field, that works great for weed control and fungicides, but it's not ideal for nitrogen application. Stream bars concentrate the fertilizer solution in streams rather than misting it across the crop. This minimizes the amount of nitrogen that lands on the leaves and minimizes the burn. Stream barring has been done for years with good results. If you haven't been applying your wheat fertility this way, check into it now for your farm. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM channel 147, that's the rural radio channel, at 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. Central each weekday.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Breed of the Week, a Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
There are as many living things in a handful of soil as there are people on planet Earth. But what do they do, and how do farmers work with them to raise successful crops? To learn more, visit rnmf.org.